Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for the Safety and Health webinar sponsored by KPA. We're going to give our audience just a minute to settle in and we'll start the presentation shortly. Thank you. Thanks again to those who are joining us today. We'll start the presentation in just a minute. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Safety and Health Magazine webcast, Frontline Focus, Enhancing Safety Engagement on the Job, sponsored by KPA. This is Barry Botino. I'm an associate editor at Safety and Health and a co host of the On the Safe Side podcast. I'll be your moderator for today's event. Before we get started, I want to let you know that the views of today's speakers and organization are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the National Safety Council or Safety and Health magazine. Any mention of a commercial product, enterprise, or publication does not mean the council or the magazine endorses those items. Near the conclusion of today's event, we'll have a Q&A with our speakers. If you have a question, just click the Q&A button located at the bottom of the screen, type in your question, and press the send button. You can submit those questions at any time during today's event. Today, the chat is also open, but we do ask that you enter any questions via the Q&A form. After today's presentation, you'll be asked to complete a brief evaluation survey, but I'll tell you more about that a little later. This webcast will be archived. If you'd like to view this presentation or any of our past webcasts, please go to safetyandhealthmagazine.com/events. Now let's introduce our speakers. Joining us today are Shawn Smith and Taylor Thorn. Shawn is the product director for training at KPA, and he has 3 decades of experience in training production, programming, and learning management. He leads the organization's dynamic training and content team, who are all very passionate about keeping employees safe. Away from work, Shawn spends his spare time as a high school robotics coach in Pennsylvania. Taylor serves as the senior product director for KPA. His expertise is as a construction technologist who's focused on safety and mobile applications. Taylor co-founded and served as the CEO of Anchor Rock, a construction safety software solutions firm acquired by KPA in 2023. He has hands-on experience managing and building safety solutions in construction and for general, electrical, mechanical, steel, and roofing contractors. Again, we thank you all for tuning into this presentation. With that, welcome, Taylor, and please take it away.
Thank you, Barry. Nice to be here, and we're excited to get started. Just a couple slides to get going here before we jump into the nuts and bolts of our presentation. A little bit about us. We're with KPA, as Barry mentioned. We offer EHS solutions across many industries. What we're mostly focused on today is going to be kind of revolving around our Flex platform. And so Flex is a EHS software kind of built by safety professionals with more than 11,000 customers using that platform. A big piece of that platform is our LMS, which encompasses the online training piece of it with thousands of courses. And so we'll kind of be getting into a lot of things training today. So a lot of our discussion will be revolving around that. And then KPA does provide some consulting services as well. So you're seeing there some of the kind of number of credentialed EHS experts on our team in-house that go out to sites and facilities and perform consulting services as well. But that's a little bit about us. In terms of the plan for today, here's a bit of the agenda. We're going to start with some best practices on how to get training to the front lines and the best ways to do that. We will talk about how to engage your employees in that process so that the employees are fully immersed in this idea of training. We'll then kind of switch to a conversation around switching to a digital platform to help you manage this process. We'll talk about how that can help with some retention of your workforce. And then we'll, as Barry mentioned, we'll do a Q&A at the end where Shawn and I can answer any questions that you all might have. So with that being said, I'm going to kick it over to Shawn, and he'll get us started.
Thanks, Taylor. So where we really want to start today is with best practices. And when we're talking best practices, we're talking about, our best practices related to training. So the first thing we really want to start with is understanding how to reach people. We can have the best training program out there, but if our method of communication fails, then it's not going to work. It won't be effective. And reaching every employee can be a challenge if we have a remote workforce. And you really, for the most impact, the most effective training program, you want to reach as many employees as possible. And you really want to affect that safety culture change, which is the most powerful when you reach every employee. So we have multiple learning formats or approaches that you can take for training. And I really think it's important that we consider all of them and we use, the right approach for each kind of training that we're trying to do. So we have online training where individuals can take training at their own pace, which is one great option. We have group-based training that can be more formal with the instructor, going through slides or through specific examples. We can have more informal group training like stand-up or toolbox talks, those sorts of things. We can even have, really things that maybe some people don't consider training, like posters and reminders and signage and just the way we communicate as a team that can help, take our training forward or reiterate or reinforce it. It's really important that we reinforce learning objectives and that we, think about when we're training employees on these really important subjects, are we just giving them, one training session and expecting them to remember that forever? Or are we really setting them up to reuse those skills they're learning and give them the opportunity to use them throughout a regular day or week or throughout their job? And how are we reinforcing that? There are tools that we can use through software, through Outlook, through tools like KPA Flex, where we can use notifications to help keep managers and supervisors, as well as the employees, directly on track. And that data that we're tracking. So because we have lots of different methods for doing training, we really want to make sure that we're keeping track of it and we're tracking it in some place where we can also use reports to help us stay on target, set goals, understand where we are with our training program compared to where we were a year ago and where we want to be in the future. So combining all of these best practices really allows you to have a more organized approach that you can continue to improve on and build on within your organization. So as far as understanding how to reach people, I think it's really important when we talk about that we're talking about effective communication is really a key element to that success. And there's three questions, and I have sort of some questions within questions to build on within this. But the first one is your method practical? So if we're thinking about putting something in place, we want to make sure that it's actually something that can be done. So the first thing we ask, is it doable? Is it efficient? Is it adaptable? Is it accepted? Those thoughts, those answers really help you evaluate the, practicality of something that you want to put in place. And depending on what that is, it may be more complex, that that it's going to be more of a challenge. Or in that case where you've evaluated that, I would recommend trying to find the best ways to simplify and make it accessible, based on, really what your objectives are. But you want to keep it as practical and, accessible as possible. Secondly, is it relevant? I really think relevance is the key to engagement. So from an employee's perspective or an individual learner's perspective, does this make sense to them? Do they understand it? If you try to teach them a concept that's foreign to them, but you're also teaching it with equipment or surroundings that are also foreign to them, it's a lot harder for them to understand it, embrace it, relate it to their own experience and their own job and the way that they do things. So the more relatable the more relevant something is. And finally, is it interactive? And the interactive portion, for me is really just about giving somebody a little bit more of a way to uh, demonstrate that they understand and perform an exercise that's really going to allow them to engage with it, get something out of that engagement through answering a question, performing an action, and really allow them to experience something. And so really we found producing training over the years that the more practical, the more relevant, the more interactive, the more engagement you'll get. And that's really where all of this kind of comes back to. And that engagement can help take that learner to the next phase. And also often when you have a engaged learner, it's infectious and they take that knowledge to other employees and they share their experience, which is really just the best you could hope for when you're doing this type of training. So before we get to the next section, let's go ahead and you can go to that slide, Taylor, it's fine. But let's go ahead and open up a poll. So if everybody could take a second to answer this poll question. So what is your preferred method to provide training to employees? So one-on-one training, so like mentorship, working directly individual to individual, instructor-led, like a PowerPoint or group training, group video training, so showing a video to a group of employees, online individual training, so your sort of standard, let's assign a course, the employee takes it at their own pace, written guides, or skill assessments. And we'll take a look, and I think this kind of helps us talk a little bit about this next slide that we're about to get into. Also with this next slide in particular, the one thing I'll note is that we're going to talk a little bit about the different learning styles. And so the 3 different learning styles, that are broadly identified as visual, auditory, and kinesthetic or hands-on. And as I think everyone's understood over time that, everybody learns a little different. Some people have a combination of these learning styles, some much stronger in any one of them. But what we've definitely found is that by understanding what those learning styles are, we can definitely approach training in a way that we can be the most effective to different types of employees. And so these methods that we're actually voting on right now in the poll kind of help to inform that. I'm of the opinion that you really want to try to use lots of different ones. There's no, I don't think, specific one that's better than the other. But, as we can see from our poll results, so at 53%, we have instructor-led PowerPoint group training. And then let's see, behind that, we'd say 14% would be one-on-one training. And then group video training at 12% and online individual training at 10%, written guides at 2%, and skill assessments at 8%, which that aligns with what we see with lots of different customers. I think in particular, there are challenges with instructor-led group training that we know. There's some definite advantages. When you have a great instructor, it's a great training. But it's hard to always guarantee that, especially in a larger organization where you have to have multiple trainers. You can have some inconsistency between those trainers. I recommend in those cases, wherever you can, put things in place that do give you some consistency. Put some video segments into that instructor-led training, give some guides, and have some even some one-on-one training with those instructors, or even a qualifying program in some cases where you work with those instructors, get them to a certain level, and then put them out in the workplace doing that instruction. But you want to really try to control, most importantly, I think, that consistency of the message being delivered. And that's really, I think, one of the biggest challenges with instructor-led group training. One-on-one training is a great option, but challenging in its own way because there's only so many hours in a day. There, you could have a lot of employees and not enough people with the right experience level to be those mentors. But putting something in place, especially, where you have a platform that can help you organize that and giving those employees that potential, relationship with a mentor, where they can guide them on those specific things they need to learn, either hands-on or really more just, in regular discussions and sessions, I think is a great and super effective method. Online training, of course, the challenge with online training is, you need good content and you need a great library, and that can be hard to find. You really, when you put that in place, you want to make sure that you're not just thinking about what you need today, but you're thinking about what you need tomorrow. So you want a library that can really hit that, not just from, what our absolute need is right now, but what we expect our need to be in the future. In addition to that, a platform that allows you to customize that content or configure it for your purposes, to do additional things, both on a large and small scale, I think is critical and really makes the difference between an effective online training program and an ineffective online training program. That ability to assign employees and also just keep up with where they're at with their training, from a supervisor perspective, manager, and the employee themselves being able to get to that content when they're able to. Being able to take training when you have the time to do it is great, but you also have to make sure that your employees have that time. So that can be a challenge as well. But using these different learning formats, and especially mixing and matching them based on what your objectives are, I think are just a great road to success with your training program. So just to kind of wrap this up, some additional best practices we've identified to reinforce learning objectives. You probably heard about it. A lot of people are talking about micro content. Just to kind of explain a little bit. So you absolutely need your compliance training, and you need it annual or at the regular basis it's required. And that's often not going to be short. It's, may not be long, may not be short, maybe somewhere in the middle. It really depends on what it is. But that content needs to be what is required by the law and by the government, and you want to make sure that you have that training in place. But often it's not enough to just have that in place when we're talking about over a long period of time. And that's where we really recommend micro content and periodic knowledge checks as just great reinforcement options, where you can introduce provider like KPA. We offer hundreds of micro content training pieces where you can find something specific to a piece of equipment or to a job, and have employees, for instance, if you have a surge in hand injuries, you can do micro content to follow up on that for multiple months, where it's a 2 or 3 minute training on line of fire, understanding the right PPE for the job, all of these different shorter format topics that really help reinforce that larger objective of keeping the hand safe, but do it over time and allow the employees to really pick up and understand it, at their own pace, but also not expecting a lot of time from them on that and just continually bringing it up. I would also recommend, with your safety toolbox talks or your stand-ups or any kind of meetings, also reinforcing those same things, making sure that the employees are understanding what they're getting out of the training. Periodic knowledge checks do the exact same thing. The ability to put out questions related to those areas you want to focus on. We find it, really powerful to turn that, gamify that experience and make it so that there's almost like a challenge to it for the employees. So they want to participate and they really want to, show their knowledge and compete with each other at that level. But there's so many different ways to do that same thing. We just want to make sure that we're constantly bringing these things up that really matter and give them the opportunity to reinforce it and understand it. So engaging employees. So a couple surveys we've done. So this one the KPA had put out, which was a state of the market EHS program performance survey, it showed that the number two, area that the participants of the survey focused on was training effectiveness. So, we interpret that as, they have training programs in place, but they don't know that they're always being effective. They don't know that the employees are getting it or they're fully understanding. And so how can we make sure that we're actually taking that to the next level and that employees are fully understanding what we're teaching, what we're training? And then the next survey, that one we've got from Verdantex, found very similarly that, second most important was increase engagement levels with EHS training. So again, the way we interpret this is that, amongst all these really important priorities, understanding the level that our employees are getting from the training and the engagement from the training is very important. And, really, we believe makes a big difference in, the success of a training program. So just to kind of wrap this up, uh, as far as engaging employees, so many different ways through group quiz, as I mentioned, question of the day is something that we offer as a interactive, gamified challenge for employees is one way to really get them to get into the level of training understanding that we're hoping that they get out of these subjects. Individual training with the same equipment and process your employees use. I think that's so important from the perspective of, they're taking their time to participate in this program, and we want them to understand the concepts. And so to show them something that they can't relate to or to teach it in a way that it just doesn't connect, I think it is a lost opportunity to, really have a great training session with your employees. So, it can be little things of just, talking about that equipment they're using on a regular basis, even just seeing employees wearing the same kind of PPE they wear, walking, within the same kind of lines they're walking in on a daily basis can make that, that effect and that impact. Hearing from employees, through relevant incident recreations, allows them to really, relate it to their own lives and take that experience home. When we have an interview with an employee talking about how, injuring their hand affected their ability to do something they love, like play guitar, or, to hold, their child, that makes an impression that, sticks with them, that makes them think about where they put their hands, how quickly they go into that, area, whether they're using or allowing, the guards to do their jobs or not. That's, the level that we really think you want to try to get at to help them really understand. I always say, when you see an incident recreation, which is something we also, we definitely recommend, it's so fast and it's hard to understand how fast these things happen. But understanding before you get there that, the hazard exists and how to keep yourself safe from that, avoids having to react so quickly. So that's where the training comes in and can be extremely effective. Relative stories from coworkers and family members, incident footage and recreations. Again, seeing the real environments, similar environments, whether it be real life, animated, all of this, I think really just goes to that point of trying to engage the employees, get their attention, keep their attention, and help them learn.
Awesome. Thanks, Shawn. We're going to switch modes here and talk about switching to digital. So kind of use the idea of using technology to leverage the technology to kind of enhance your frontline training programs. A lot of stuff Shawn was talking about. Technology can be used to help not only streamline that, but make that possibly more engaging for your workforce. So I know we have a poll here, so we'll go ahead and launch that. Perfect. So, how are you keeping track of this today? We'll give 45 seconds maybe for everyone to kind of participate here. The first participation, the first poll was great, so I'm sure we'll see that here. But are you using spreadsheets, Excel? We see that time and time again, to be quite honest. Are you using a dedicated learning management software, a training software that is dedicated and that's at the core what that platform does? Or are you doing this manually through paper-based methods? Maybe you're printing out handouts and giving those to your field teams, your field leaders to then read it off. Or are you using a integrated EHS software? So that's the LMS plus more stuff. So your LMS plus your EHS plus your chemical management, your safety data sheets, whatever that is, that's what we're calling integrated EHS software. Or are you using something else? We'd be very curious. So we'll keep that open for maybe another 15 seconds while I get teed up here. All right, we can go ahead and close that poll. All right, so it's aligned, similar to the first poll. It's aligned to kind of what I would say what we see in the market with our client base before they become clients. Spreadsheets is still good old Microsoft Excel, still impacting all of our lives, and it's a powerful solution, but there's some limitations there, and we'll get into that in a second. Pretty cool to see the other half of the group is using a dedicated LMS. And so I'm sure a lot of the items that Shawn was speaking to resonate there. Manual paper-based process that aligns with what we see in the market as well, which is about 20% of the market is still doing some of this on paper, and then a small portion using a integrated EHS platform. So thank you for participating there. So we'll start here with the big question, why even take the jump and make this switch to digital. I spent, as Barry mentioned, I spent a lot of the last 5 years, specifically in the construction safety space, but talking to safety professionals who day in, day out, this is their world. And as they became clients of our software platform, I would always ask, what was the reasons you decided to kind of make this switch? And we kind of tabulated that and collected that over many years, and these are kind of the three, and I've presented these three pillars, right, of a successful safety program. I've talked to a lot of people about this, but what we heard was save time and money. That one always comes up. People want to be more efficient. They're working off of a budget. Their executives want them to be more lean and save the company money. I get it. And that always comes up, and it makes sense. Return on investment's a big thing when you're making a buying decision. Another reason is obviously kind of the OSHA side of it and the regulatory side of it is I need to maintain my compliance. I need to keep a better way to keep these records because that is what is mandated of our organization. And we need a better way to track it so that if the time comes that we need to produce said records, we can do that quickly and easily, and everything is in order. And then the third one, right, this is the one that kind of the emotional pulls at everyone's strings a little bit here, but at the end of the day, I think a lot of safety professionals, I would hope this is most important to many of them and us, is that you want to keep your workforce safe. You want to make sure everyone goes home to their loved ones at the end of the day, and that they get home safely and all intact and healthy. And so, that's a big one, and I would hope that drives a lot of us, even Shawn and I in this space, right? We work in the safety software side of things, but we are passionate about that point as well. And so those are the three driving factors of maybe why consider the switch to digital, because you could do all of that better, I guess is my point. Other things to consider specifically on the training standpoint, Shawn covered some of this, but using a platform to kind of manage your training out in the field on the front line, it allows for flexible scheduling, right? People can kind of take the training when they make sense, right? They don't have to come to the office at 2 p.m. and get in a car and drive for 45 minutes and you have everyone getting together for an instructor-led training. Maybe you could push out that training if it's something that makes sense to be done online. Then those employees are doing it at their schedule. They're not doing it at their leisure because they're going to do it and they're going to get notifications and reminders. It'll be always front and center, but they can do it on a break in the morning before they start, whenever it makes more sense versus kind of being a little less flexible. There's certainly a lot of data that shows that online training will improve the memory retention, and a lot of the training content will stick. Shawn spoke to learning accommodations, right? You can a lot of different things. Maybe some people are visual, and there's courses that are kind of tailored to that. Maybe people are don't speak English isn't their first language, and so then they're using a platform that allows translation, and they're hearing it in their native language, and they just understand that better, even if they do speak some English. And so learning accommodations is a big piece of it, of why maybe considering switch to digital. And then, a big one is, okay, great. Now we have all this data, and Shawn spoke to this, right? We're collecting all the completion and who's done it, who hasn't done it, who's up for expiration or renewal in the next 30 days, 60 days. You're going to get all this data all of a sudden in front of you, and it's not only going to be accurate, but it's going to help you make decisions that, data-driven decisions that drive the business forward and keep people on top of things in terms of their training completion. And so some reasons to consider here. Why make that switch to using technology to help you manage this process? Now, half the group said Excel is the way to go, or at least Excel is what you're doing now. And there's no dig on that. Like I said, it's a powerful platform, and we see, I would say, probably at least 50% of our clients who end up buying into KPA Flex, they're likely using Excel, maybe not for their entire safety program, but tracking training is a very common way. The matrix with all the employees down the left column, and then across the top, all the columns of all the different certs, and then in the fields next to the employee, you're putting a checkbox, or you're putting a date, and then you're trying to highlight the cell in red when it's expired, or yellow when it's coming up. If you have 10 employees, probably manageable. If you have 1,000 employees, gets wiry real fast. And so there's some limitations there. Obviously, there's scaling issues in that it's not easily maintained, and it takes a lot of time to maintain it. Even if you are able to maintain it, it's going to be pretty time intensive. The idea of being able to get data out of it really quickly, maybe you being the expert in it can do that. But what if you need, in a construction scenario, you need 50 foremen or 25 project managers out of the job site to also have access to that data, so that they can verify their crews or whatever. They can verify that data. I mean, that becomes real challenging with Excel, and they probably aren't a wizard like you are in terms of being able to filter and set up different views. So it gets hard to get the pertinent data out of there quickly. Reporting is difficult. And if you can do that well in Excel, kudos to you, but not everyone can do that. And so being able to generate those reports pretty seamlessly, it can be a challenge. The idea of being able to share proof of training, right? We've seen, at least I've seen a lot, and I'm sure Shawn has too, a request where someone's asking, I'm working at a job site or a facility, maybe someone's asking for proof of my training, and I need to send that off to an external party. It's tough when you have one Excel file with all your employees on there, and you're trying to just pick the ones that make sense, and you got all the colors, and it's hard. And so there's no clean way to kind of share that data pull in Excel. And then certainly the lack of automations, right? It's the idea of someone's coming up for expiration, push them a notification or reminder 30 days out, 15 days out, one day before, on the day of. That is not easily done through Excel. I'm sure someone has figured out a way to do it, but it's not certainly easy. And so there's limitations there in terms of some automations that make this all happen more seamlessly. So then if you're going to get into this, Shawn talked real, traditional, a lot about kind of your traditional training, your compliance training, as he called it. He did dabble in micro training, right? And so I'm going to present just an idea here, a toolbox talk, a safety meeting, a weekly safety huddle, call it what you want to call it. But technology makes this process specifically, if you're going to get into that whole micro training concept using tech, a platform makes this pretty manageable, to be honest, very manageable. And so your field leaders who are in charge usually of leading this process, they'll get onto a mobile app. They will start the form, right? It might be called Toolbox Talks. It might be called Safety Meetings. They'll start to fill that out. They're going to document who was there, right? Their crew, their employees who are participating in the safety meeting. So they're going to document who was there. They're going to collect a signature from those folks by passing around a device. Maybe everyone's signing off. Maybe they don't want to touch a shared device. And so they're going to take a picture of everyone standing there. They're going to take a picture of a sign-in sheet, right? You can use native features of the mobile device at this point to make the process more effective. And then after you document everyone through there, obviously most secondarily important is what did we talk about? And you'll have some good content in there. You're going to maybe source content from KPA Flex has a content library. Shawn's team generates tons of great content that can be used as resources that can get pulled in to this process. Maybe you're going to source that content from another third party. Maybe you write, we work with a lot of clients who have in-house training teams who write their own weekly safety meeting topics. However, you're going to get your topics. The key piece is you can pull that topic into the platform, into the specific record. And now you have the topic discussed. You have everyone who is there. You have wet signatures if you need them. And this process takes 5 to 10 minutes. It's all stored electronically. Once your leader saves that, it fires up to the cloud. If they don't have a data connection, right, it'll sit on their device until they regain connectivity, and then it'll fire up to the cloud. And you, as the manager of this, you're going to start to see all this come in, and you can perform all your reporting on it, see who's doing what, who's not doing what, get on top of those folks that aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. And so just the visibility aspect of that data being collected becomes critical to kind of managing this process, and it becomes an important piece to it. And one of the benefits of using a software to kind of manage this concept of a safety meeting as a form of micro training. Another idea, and this is probably a little less commonly considered micro training. I'm going to throw it out there just because in my mind, this idea of job planning, right? We're going to do a JHA, we're going to do a pre-task plan, we're going to do a task hazard analysis, an activity hazard analysis. I've heard a lot of folks call that different names. Usually has very similar process in terms of what that entails. A checklist of things to consider before doing the work, and any permits required. But almost always there is this idea of kind of the common 3 columns to a JHA. What's the task we're performing? What's the hazard associated to that task? And how do I control or mitigate said hazard? And you work through your tasks for the day. Usually this is done often, if you're working with a team, this is actually in a group setting, right? And so the field leader is setting this thing up and they're saying, we're doing these 3 tasks and here are the hazards, here are the controls, but we're going to talk about that as a group. And we're going to document that similar to kind of how we did with our safety meeting, but we're going to compile that all through a platform, through a software, and it's all going to be stored there, and it's going to be clean, and everyone hopefully has had the conversation around those task hazards and controls so that everyone's aware of what they need to do to stay safe as they start to perform their work that day. So it could be considered a way of kind of pre-job, pre-process micro training, getting everyone up to speed from an awareness standpoint, so that hazards are mitigated and controlled. I'll share one little story here on this. We've seen a lot of folks start to adopt, at least in construction, but I'm sure this is applicable outside of construction as well, where technology assists in this. That whole 3 column I mentioned, the task hazard control, sure, write out the task, write out the hazard, write out the control, or type out the task hazard control. That's all fine, but tech can kind of help. We've seen some folks get pretty cool with some of these forms that they're building in KPA Flex, where they can actually pre-populate a task hazard and control library. I've personally dubbed like the procedure set library. So here are the 70 common tasks we do I'm just going to pick my favorite flavor, electrical contractor. Here are my 70 common tasks. Here's the hazards associated with those tasks, and here are the controls. Me, the safety person, the expert, I set that all up in this library. And then my field team, as they jump onto the platform, instead of typing it out manually and maybe guessing the hazards and controls tied to the task, they're just picking the tasks that they're performing, and the hazards and controls are automatically populated. So field loves it because it's faster. Safety teams tend to like it because they get to control the actual content, and they know it's right, versus the field maybe guessing on a hazard and control because they don't know. So the last thing you want to have happen. So obviously that kind of procedure set library tied into a PDF printed isn't ever going to happen, but maybe Excel, you could try to figure that out, probably a little challenging. So just an example of where technology can kind of push the game a little bit and make it more effective, but also make it much more seamless for your field. All right, just a couple more slides here. Best practices, things to consider if you're going to go down this path. For the folks that are the 20% that were doing manual and the 50% doing Excel, if you're going to get into a EHS platform software, some things to keep in mind. Shawn and I have seen enough of these implementations. We probably agree on some best practices here based on some not so best that we've seen happen. So have your data ready, right? You're getting, no matter, which platform you end up going with, you're going to need to have some kind of implementation import type data. Here's my employee list. Here are all the trainings that we train on. If you manage projects or facilities or locations, right, have that all kind of ready. And our friend Excel will be your friend there, because that's how that'll get imported in the system. But have that data ready. It's clean, it's good, it's ready to go. That's going to make the process just go faster and easier. Consider mobile devices for your frontline employees. Are you going to expect that they all participate in the safety program and go out there and do observations and hazard analysis and obviously push training out to them? If so, a mobile device for those employees may be needed. Do you have that now? Do we need to invest in that? So keep that in mind if you plan to go that far down the line. Maybe you're just going to have your field leaders drive this and or your supervision, and you don't need to go all the way down to the individual employee, but consider that. Obviously, there's some investment that would have to happen if you're going to go all the way down. We're seeing so much mobile device usage out in the field for other processes other than safety these days, so it's probably becoming less and less of a concern, but something to think about. Always good to have an internal champion. So whoever on your team, whether it's going to be you plus a few others, someone else altogether, but having those kind of champions, those cheerleaders, those kind of super admin type users within your organization will help this go a long way from an implementation standpoint. They will help drive it, but then they'll also become the internal expert. So internal folks need some help. You kind of have this this process set with your champions. Think about integration, right? This idea of moving data from one platform. So say Flex EHS, you're using that for your safety and training platform, but you also use probably an HR software, an accounting software, procurement software, whatever else you use. Obviously, we all are running our businesses on software these days, and that we all get that. And so connecting them becomes of interest, because you can then automate processes, right? And you don't have to do double entry and rework, right? If your employees are getting entered in your HR system, but your EHS software also obviously stores employees, instead of having to double admin and double manage that data getting added, an integration would allow that data to move automatically through something called API, and that could run hourly, nightly, and the admin side of it just disappears, right? So the point of system of truth is your HR software for that example. Then those employees are automatically added into the other system using that integration. So when you're vetting your software vendors, ask them about integration. If they say what's integration, that's probably a red flag to turn around and walk the other way. But this day and age, this is the name of the game for a lot of software providers out there. So just consider that if you want to go down that path. Make sure the vendor has that in place. And then training, not what we've been talking today, but training on said platform is very important in this becoming successful. And so ensuring your admins are fully trained, and then obviously whoever else is going to be touching the platform and using it also needs to be trained. Most software vendors, I know KPA, Flex certainly provides training as part of our implementation, and that should be normal. If that's not being provided, that's also a red flag. If they just are going to set this thing up for you and expect you to figure it out, that would be a concern. So it's an important piece of the program becoming successful. I've seen, unfortunately, some where training wasn't taken seriously, and then the whole thing kind of goes by the wayside. So take it from me that it's something to certainly do not skip as part of that implementation and switching process. So real quick here, I'm just going to wrap up with some kind of this idea of using a platform to help engage your frontline in terms of training and how that helps with retention. Shawn referenced a survey we did. So here's another piece that came out of that survey. But at its core, the top 2 and 3, motivations for reducing incidents, improving morale and culture, increasing employee retention. So, employees are aware of this. They're concerned about it. If we are having tons of incidents, am I next? And is this the right place for me? And so know that avoiding those incidents through proper training and effective training will likely start to increase employee retention. You could get creative with some of your training and add some career advancement programs, some skills assessments. That's not only compliance type training, but this allows your employees to kind of further their career and become more successful in what they do and the trades that they work in and the jobs they perform. And that's bettering the employee, and the employee will certainly like that, right? And that'll assist with retention as well. And obviously, I talked reducing incidents and then just generally improving morale and culture, all important to keeping employees healthy, safe, engaged, and retained. So here's our recap. We threw a lot at you. Hopefully you found that somewhat enlightening and helpful as you kind of go down this path for those that are considering going down this path of changing the way you manage and perform your frontline training. But Shawn discussed, understanding how to reach folks and reach your employees. Consider using, multiple learning formats. Shawn spent some time there. Focus on those outcomes. And then ultimately, if you're going to do it, you'll have to, you'll make that switch to digital. And we kind of walk through some of the best practices there, the reasons why. And so that kind of wraps up that side of the presentation. We're going to get to Q&A in a second. One promotional slide here, just about us. I know I teed it up at the beginning, kind of very high level. Here's a little bit more at a core of what KPA Flex can do, why our customers enjoy the platform so much. Incredibly configurable, very easy to use, flexible, just thus the name. But you're kind of seeing the core modules or product lines within the platform. EHS is all of your safety and compliance process needs, your safety management side of things, your incident management side of things. The training LMS is we spend a lot of time talking today in that world, which is all your courses and industry-specific packages, micro-learning, question of the day, all sorts of kind of training-specific items all live within our training or LMS. And then there's ESG, SDS, and our newest product within the ecosystem, which is contractor management. So this idea of managing third-party vendors, pre-qualifying those vendors or contractors to ensure that they are qualified to come out to your facility, your job site, your plant, whatever the case is. And so this is at the core of what we offer. We will be at a couple NSC Safety Congress and Expo events, so please stop by and say hi. I know we'll have a big booth there, but we also have a couple speaking sessions. We encourage you to come out and come listen to a couple of our in-house experts. I see a few oil and gas names there. I see some manufacturing and environmental folks. So come out and listen to a couple engaging conversations. And if you're going to the Congress and Expo, certainly come by the booth and say hi. We can give you a live demo, kind of show you what we're all about. And with that, we will wrap up with Q&A.
Great. Thank you so much, Taylor, and thank you, Shawn, for sharing your knowledge and your insights with us today. And we're super excited that you'll be in Orlando with us. So we're looking forward to that next month. Before we start the Q&A, I want to let everyone know about the evaluation survey that we're asking you to complete. The survey will open in a different screen after this webinar. Your input is really important to us because it does help us to improve our future webcasts. And let's get started on some of those questions. And I see one in the Q&A here. For both of you, do you find employees willing to use personal cell phones for work-related safety training? Timothy says, I can predict pushback from this or wanting reimbursement somehow. And he says, computer terminals are not practical in our facilities. Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I can jump in there first. Just from my experience, I've seen a little bit of it. I feel like it's less and less so every year that goes by. As I said, I spent a lot of time in construction, so saw it more with the union contractors and the rules with the union. So there was sometimes hesitancy there. Oftentimes our clients, so the contractor themselves would purchase devices at least for certain employees, levels of employees. But I feel like it's becoming less and less of a thing. But I guess it really depends on the space you work in and kind of that culture that's set there. I've heard of folks, companies doing reimbursement or some sort of plan around that too. So that's not out of the norm. I guess that's something as a company you'd have to decide what approach, and if there is resistance there, maybe approach will be needed. But Shawn, I'm not sure if you've seen that at all.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much exactly as you described it. I see it changing and not being as much of an issue as it has been, but still, and depending on the particular industry, the type of employee, and where they're working, it can come up. One thing in particular, especially that I've seen with contractors, is the idea that, hey, let's implement training that they can take not here, for someone who's maybe a contractor coming on site, or an employee that has access to a computer at home or the library or another place. We do see that as an option, but obviously, with your own employees working at the location, it is an area that you have to find another sort of approach. Another common workaround for that is a kiosk with, say, like an iPad or a tablet that you can put in a place that's a shared device that you can let employees. And I've seen clients, buy five, Samsung tablets, and then just lend them out, and and then they turn them back in when they're done. So there's definitely other options, and there's affordable technology out there now, where you can buy multiple devices at a pretty low cost.
Great. Sean, next question for you. You had mentioned gamification early on, and I wanted to ask, if I have a group of older workers who aren't necessarily tech savvy, are there strategies for me to kind of help them transition over to digital trainings that may include things like video or games?
Yeah, so I think that it's all about the execution of the technology, how we put it in place. But typically, you're gonna like gamification sounds complicated, but it can be done in really simple ways. Inviting an employee to complete something, it's gonna pop up in their email or on their device that they, will do this thing. So then they're gonna participate in that. We're gonna make launching the content as easy as possible. All you got to do is log in, and then you're going to see everything you need to do right there displayed. You launch it, you complete it. So yeah, we definitely, we have not seen the same kind of barriers that way, that maybe we did 10, 15 years ago, because technology has become much more accessible, like phones, like tablets, and even web interface directly is pretty simple, easy to kind of follow along. But we definitely recommend starting easy. Anything you can do to help the employees kind of understand what they're getting into before you launch it, I always recommend. I always say, don't just send out the notifications, and then let them figure it out. Let's have an event, to share with the employees, hey, we're going to start doing this. This is what you can expect. This is how it's going to work. And yeah, we've seen a ton of success with that.
Absolutely, great idea, Sean. Taylor, I wanted to kind of lean on your experience in construction. And the next question we had is, if my organization has industry-specific training that we do annually, how does a digital solution help us present and manage our specific industry needs?
Sure. It's a great question, and one we certainly hear, not just construction, but manufacturing, mining. Shawn's team has heard this time and time again. At the end of the day, your vendor, your software provider, whoever you're going down this path with digital training management, yeah, LMS, you're going to need to ensure that they have content that is relevant to your business. And so training packages that are relevant to construction or oil, gas, or mining, ask those questions. If they're in that space and they have clients already using the platform in your industry, they're likely going to have industry specific training. But I know for Shawn's team, that's a big piece of kind of making our platform attractive to cross industry. And so having those specific training packages is kind of the name of the game. Would you agree, Shawn?
100%. From my perspective, it never hurts to ask what they actually have. So when you're evaluating, whether you want to get in that relationship with that provider, ask for the catalog, ask them specific questions, kind of challenge their understanding of your industry a little bit. And I think you'll find pretty quickly who a good partner is through doing a little bit of that, just kind of additional research. In many cases like ours, we'll let you try it all out. So get a demo and take a look. And I've had prospects fully review a catalog from their perspective and give us the notes, and that's awesome. If you look at the level of the training content at that level before you get into it, you're not going to have any questions or concerns about what you're actually launching and getting into with your employees. So I would definitely take that extra due diligence, and ask the questions, get the information before you make the decision.
Great. Shawn, you mentioned you touched on this a little bit, but we had a question come in about, do you recommend a specific type of device or hardware for a company like mine who does not have digital training efforts, but is kind of looking to kind of dip their toe into that pool a little bit?
Well, so I mean, I always think when we talk about dipping your toe in, group training is a great way to dip your toe in, and you can do that with courses as well, with learning, where you show it to a group of employees and then give them credit as a group. That's the simplest, easiest way. You can do that with a projector or connecting to a display or television in a training room. Chromecast, we've had clients set up. There's lots of like affordable technology you can get started with. But I think kind of the easiest entry level is probably some form of group training that way. But then beyond that, most online based training is designed nowadays. I'd say in the last 10 years, everybody's shifted to this sort of mobile first approach where if you launch our training, it'll work on a phone, a tablet, a computer, a television. It's designed to really be flexible that way. So online training approached that way, can really be used in just about any device you can think of. So, those are kind of the two major ways I would look at getting started.
Yeah, there probably likely won't be barriers on the through your, well, at least I can tell you with KPA Flex, there isn't going to be a barrier or a burden on the type of mobile device, right? So it's going to work seamlessly on Android, whether that's a phone or a tablet. It's going to work seamlessly on iOS, Apple, whether that's a phone or a tablet. Can't speak for every other vendor out there, but I know that's obviously part of what makes it easy and appealing. And so it's important to us. But so at the end of the day, the mobile device, preferred mobile device is really going to be your preference. Is budget matter, and you need to pick up some $100 tablets? Great. Maybe your company IT team says we only buy Apple devices and we have iPhones, so we're going to buy some more iPhones. We're going to buy some iPads. That's going to be your call. Just ensure obviously that your whatever software provider you're about to kind of marry to works well natively on Android, iOS.
I'd say that's a key is the native app on the device is a big differentiator. If you're going to go to mobile, you really want that native app. The way it performs, the way it displays is significantly better.
And for
Great.
those that aren't familiar with that what native means, so just if you can search it in either the app stores and it appears there, it's a native app, right? It was released through the Google Play Store, the App Store. And so those are native designed mobile apps versus there's alternatives where you can kind of trick people with a web app on a mobile device, but that's not a native app that requires a data connection. Native apps can work offline. So Flex does this as well, where if I'm going down into a mine and I have 5 trainings assigned to me, I can still, not that I would complete those trainings in mine, maybe I would, but I can still complete those trainings without a data connection. They're on my device. It's going to save locally on the device, as I mentioned earlier. And then once I regain connectivity, it'll sync to the cloud. So that whole online offline concept will only work with a native app.
Great. Thank you for that clarification, Taylor. Really important to mention that. Thank you. Um, we looks like we have time for one more question today, guys, and I want to kind of throw this out to both of you. And the question is, what's the best way for us to gather and act on feedback that employees give us in regards to our training programs? I was hoping you guys could share some insights there.
Shawn, you want to take a crack first?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I think the the key when you receive that feedback, obviously you want to sort of review it, and it even could be an opportunity for you to work with your partner, your vendor, the client success manager, or clinicians to kind of see, hey, based on this feedback, what are our opportunities to improve, or to make modifications that could end up improving our overall program. But yeah, I think it's key to listen. It's key to offer the opportunity to get that feedback. And then, as far as like we talked about earlier, that takes you to that level of engagement. If you're listening and you're reacting and you're responding and you're putting things in place, you're going to keep doing, the right things to keep your learners engaged.
Yeah, I would agree. I wouldn't shy away from the feedback. I think it's a good thing. I happen to be in the product world where all we do is get client feedback thrown at us, and that's kind of our job, is to take that feedback and collect it. And are you seeing trends? And if you are seeing trends, then maybe that helps you identify where to kind of start. But I wouldn't shy away from it. I think it's a good thing. As Shawn said, it'll help your program get better. It'll give you a glimpse into what your workforce is concerned about, cares about, is interested in. And these are all good things of not only making the training better, the training program better, but kind of staying engaged with your workforce. So I would not shy away from it. I would actually welcome it.
Great. Folks, unfortunately, we've run out of time today. We thank you all for attending this presentation, and we would appreciate you taking just a minute or two to share your feedback via our survey. A big thank you goes out today to our outstanding presenters, Shawn Smith and Taylor Thorn, and of course, everyone from our sponsor at KPA. This ends today's Safety and Health Magazine webcast. Take care, everyone, and have a safe day.